Well, there's a much younger Steve Edwards. I think that's 1959. That was my first bicycle. I remember my dad took me down to B.F. Goodrich to get that bicycle, and I was so embarrassed by that bicycle. Because you see the bar that goes across that makes it a boy's bike? Well, there was a little screw on the back end there where you could lower it and make it a girl's bike too. And I was so afraid at age 5 that my friends would find out that that could be a girl's bike. Those are things you worry about when you're 5 years old. But I want to tell you a little bit about myself and really what connects my interest and passion to this topic. And I'm standing in one place, which is relatively hard for me to do, but because they're videotaping, I'm trying to help them out and not move around too much. But I'm going to go back many, many years. I grew up in Western New York, Buffalo, New York. And it was the last day of 4th grade. And I had a first-year teacher named Miss Lascola. And Miss Lascola had glasses, you know, remember those pointy ones, ladies, that went way out like that? And hair that just kept going up. And it was the last day of 4th grade, and she announced to the whole class, you know, where everybody was going for 5th grade. And she said, well, you 3 are going to have Miss So-and-so, and you 2 are going to have Miss So-and-so. And then she said, well, Stephen, she saved me for last, she said, you're repeating 4th grade. And she said that in front of the whole class. And she said, you're going to have Mrs. Kelly next year. Well, that was the first time I found out that I was being retained in school. Now, I was a non-reader in 4th grade. You know the prognosis for someone who's a non-reader in 4th grade. It's not very good. Nowadays, if you're a non-reader in kindergarten, I think it's a tragedy. Because, you know, I don't know, you guys aren't in my age range, but when I was in kindergarten, if you knew your colors, you were way ahead of the curve. Right? I mean, you know, but I didn't know my colors. I didn't know my colors. You know, they went to my parents and said, he doesn't know his colors. Well, after several months, they had my eyes checked, and I was colorblind. So I really did, you know, have an excuse for that one. But you think back to those days, and we had the reading groups, and the reading groups were, you know, if you were any kind of bird that was blue or red, I mean, you were in the elite group. You got the nice beanbag chairs, the well-lit corner, and the teacher spent time with you because you were fun, because you could read. Well, I was at the other end of the spectrum. Me and Barbie Williams, we sat in the other side of the room. We were in the bird droppings group. We were at the other end of the spectrum. And we spent a lot of time coloring. I became quite a good colorer, but I didn't learn how to read. Now, the tragedy was, the second year of 4th grade, what was different? Absolutely nothing. A different teacher. It's like speaking louder to a deaf person. Why can't you hear me? It doesn't matter how loud you speak, they can't hear you. Well, if we don't have some change in our practice or some intervention in place, nothing's going to change for that child, but we expect some different, magical, different result. And that was not the case. Fortunately for me, there was a woman, a retired teacher who lived across the street named Mrs. Howell. And she was, you know, probably about the age I am now, but I thought she was like 100. And her husband was the assistant superintendent of schools. And she took me under her wing and she taught me how to read. Do you remember the old SRA reading series? Remember the different colors and everything? Well, I remember the first day I went into her house. There, she sat in this big wingback chair. She was a very petite woman. And next to her was the SRA reading series. Now, later in life, I figured she must have ripped that off from the school. I mean, who's got an SRA reading series sitting in their living room? I don't know, maybe many of you do, I don't know, but, you know, I saw somebody stealing the pens, but anyway, I would advocate that, though. Take every pen. Take every single pen. Why take every pen? Because how many times did a student get sent to my office because they didn't have a pen? Then they would sit there for 45 minutes without not missing instruction until somebody could see them. So I take every pen. When someone gets up to go to the bathroom, take their pen. They'll come back, where's my pen? Hey, I don't know. I mean, you know. Now, here's the deal. I'd be walking down the hall, and my call letters on the radio when I was in Hartford were DE. So the kids would go, hey, DE, you got a pen? I go, yeah, what do you want? Hilton, Marriott, you know, what's your favorite chain? We create a lot of our own problems, I think. And what do people tell me when I gave kids pens? You are not holding them accountable. Later in life, they will not be able to function because you gave them a pen. First of all, what I always keep in mind is these kids came to me extremely dysfunctional. Much of the portion of their life is in total disarray. And if I can get them engaged in class by just giving them a pen, I'm going to do that. And I'll give them a pen every day. And I'll keep giving them a pen. And at some point, they'll bring that pen. You know, sometimes we make big issues out of very small things, I think. Realize this. Take this information. You might find this interesting. You might want to write this down because you got pens. Some of you have computers. But if you take a child from birth to 18, and they go to school for 12 and a half years, half-day kindergarten, and full day from 1st through 12, and they go approximately 180 days a year, 7 hours a day, and they have perfect attendance every day of school. Now, you know not a lot of kids like that, right? They never miss a day of school in their whole public school experience. A child who meets that criteria from birth to 18 spends less than 9% of their life in school. 8.85% of their life is spent in school from birth to 18. That means 91% of that time is under somebody else's care or nobody's care. We really think about the impact we have with the minimal amount of time we have with the kids. That's pretty phenomenal. When you figure we have kids, and every kid doesn't come every day. So you have that child for 1 year. When you ask kids who had an impact on your life, they don't say LeBron James. They mention a parent, a grandparent, a teacher. Teachers are always in that list. How many of you had a teacher impacted your life? How many of you had a teacher was the reason you went into education? I mean, a number of you. You know, they've had a tremendous influence on all of our lives. In some cases, not always positive. But anyway, for me, I finally got out of 4th grade and went on and went to college. And I was an administrator, teacher at every level, an administrator, and in several different circumstances. I was an administrator in a small rural community that had more cows than people in Connecticut. It was all dairy farms. Then I went and became administrator at the University High School on the campus of the University of Connecticut, where we had the highest test scores in the state. We had 2 PhD families. Kids were read to in the womb. I mean, and kids weren't so much about learning there, but they were about what? A grade. Get a grade. They were the parents with the bumper sticker on the back of their car. My child is an honor student at Edwin O. Smith High School. Well, from there I went to Hartford and became principal at the lowest performing school in the state, where we had almost everybody, I guess, on free lunch. We had 40 different languages spoken there. You know these experiences. You people live this every day. I was fluent in all but 39 of them. We had about a 28% dropout rate. Had the lowest test scores in the state. Many of my peers were concerned. They said, Steve, why would you go there? You were at this school that was, at the top, and you went. We were a Blue Ribbon Award-winning school. Then you went here. And I said, I wanted to see if we could really make a difference with those kids. Because whatever you're passionate about, you will have an impact on. I don't care what it is. Whatever you are passionate about, you have an impact on. You know that. What are those things you really get fired up about? Those are the things we make a difference with. And being a child who was retained in school, I got fired up about kids who didn't make it. I was a pit bull. We went there, 28% dropout rate. We cut the dropout rate in half in 2 years. How do we do that? We cared. Kids didn't come to school, we went and got them. I'm not accepting you're not going to come to school. We're going to keep coming to your house. I'm going to keep knocking on the door. People go, well, we can't do that, or I'm not willing to do that. Well, if you're not willing, I'm not asking other people to do it. See, for me, you have to model behavior you want other people to practice and do it to nauseam. So I said, I'm going to go get those kids. And we're to send teams of people out to get those kids. And, I don't want to oversimplify things, but that was one of the things. That sends a strong message. We're not going to accept that you're not going to come to school. I don't think any child is born inherently saying, I want to do poorly in school, I want to fail, my career goal is to drop out, or my school plan is to leave school. But we took that dropout rate in 10 years down to 1.8%. And what did people say? Edwards cheats. Of course they say that, because if you cannot come up with a solution, you come up with an excuse. I firmly believe that. There's always excuses. See, for me, it's about looking in the mirror, not out the window. When we look in the mirror, that's where the answers lie. It's not somebody else's responsibility. When I went to Hartford, I gave the first day, we had about 2,600 kids in that school and about 300 staff members, certified, non-certified. And I started off by giving all of them a 3x5 card. And on that card, I said, write the 3 best things about this school. Then flip it over and write the 3 biggest concerns you have. I collected that, I collated that information, then I gave it back to them. Too often we're quick to tell people what they need to do. We need to listen more and let them come to the conclusion. Let them find their own way. What do you think they said was the best thing about the school? Come on, this is simple. Them! We're an unbelievable staff. Mirror, mirror on the wall, we're the best teachers of them all. I mean, we're unbelievable. What do you think the worst thing was? The kids are a pain in the neck. These aren't the kids we used to get. The parents don't do anything. The third biggest thing was no support from administration. Some of them wrote in parentheses, we don't mean you. I said, I've only been here 10 minutes. How much could have I screwed up? For me, that was revealing because we had a group of people who were looking out the window, not looking in the mirror. We had to change that paradigm. So we began having conversations around what would it look like? What do we have control over? What do we have influence over, as Covey talks about, what's beyond our control? We don't decide who has babies. We don't decide who moves into the community. We don't decide who moves out of the community. But we do have control what happens in our classrooms, in our schools on a day-to-day basis. And we can have significant influence over our students and our parents. Well, I think one of the biggest challenges, well, from there I went on and I became vice president of the National Crime Prevention Council in D.C. McGruff the crime dog, take a bite out of crime, remember him? Okay, I reported to a dog in a trench coat. That was a real career highlight for me. But I oversaw other youth and children's initiatives nationally and internationally and gave me an opportunity to work with children not only in this country but in developing countries who were extremely disadvantaged. And it was an eye-opening experience. And then from there I went and taught at George Washington University in D.C. in the Graduate School of Educational Leadership. Could not handle the bureaucracy of the university system. No knock on universities, but for me, I couldn't handle it and wanted to get back and spend more time working in schools. And I spend most of my time traveling around the country working with schools, school districts, primarily in situations where they're having huge challenges. They don't bring people in when they're doing really well. They bring people in when they're struggling.